Who asked Pete if you would come and join us up at the microphone over here. Great to have you with us, Pete. Excuse me, just clearing my throat. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to give you COVID. I always get this. When you know you're not allowed to cough because you're in public, you suddenly have this urge to cough. I don't know if it's just me that does that.
It might just be you.
It might just be me, yeah. Thanks very much for driving in, coming to see us, and coming to join in this morning. Tell us a little bit to start with just about you and your family. I know you've got a lovely family, but not everyone watching will know them. So tell us about them.
Yeah. So thanks, Frank. I'm married to Joanna, who many of you will have met at various things. We've got 3 kids, Beth, who's 9, Josh, who's 7, and Lucy, who's 6, going on 26. I work part-time as a GP in Bury St Edmunds. We serve a mainly older population. And the rest of my time during the week is spent as a medical director for an organisation called Suffolk Local Medical Committee.
Okay.
And then in my spare time I do a bit of running and read books of various quality on my Kindle.
Of various quality? Any particular genre of book that you're particularly into?
To risk sounding like an intellectual, which I'm not, I like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which is a sort of Russian author.
Right.
But I also...
Obviously you read in the original Russian? Or?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Absolutely.
Great.
But I also load of rubbish too.
Okay. I guess just those 2 parts of your work have been much more complicated over the last year. I mean, the local team that you're meeting with, you had some big decisions to take, I guess. Tell us a little bit about your work and what it's been like recently. Yeah,
so it's certainly been a massive game changer, COVID. I'm not sure I'm massively qualified to talk about the situation in hospital, although I do know that the situation's been very serious, huge numbers of very ill people out there. And in Suffolk last week we had a meeting for the first time in living memory talking about what happens if the hospital is just overwhelmed. It was quite scary. I'm not sure we're at that point and the things look a little bit better, but it was quite a moment for us. I'm probably more qualified to talk about the pressures on fellow cardigan wearers, which is what we call GPs in the NHS.
You're not allowed to wear cardigans if you work in a hospital then?
You're absolutely not allowed to wear a cardigan.
I see,
in a hospital.
Okay, right.
Yeah. The issue I think really is, and the challenge is getting enough vaccine. We have lots of sites, lots of people, we just don't really have enough vaccine. And I think the other issue for the cardigan wearers is that we've got a massive backlog of work out there. So people who normally have diabetic checks or high blood pressure checks, we haven't been able to get to them. Mm-hmm. People who perhaps should come and see us with suspected cancer symptoms, they're not coming in the numbers that perhaps we would want. And so you can see there's a picture building up of a sort of huge short-term challenge in COVID and vaccination, but also a massive long-term challenge for the whole NHS. So it's challenging. Yeah,
we're reading about it in the news. In fact, I'm sure everyone will want me to say how grateful we are to people working in the NHS at the moment, facing all of that and presumably working extra shifts and all the rest of it. I mean, I didn't ask you this in advance, but what would you say to people who aren't sure at the moment, should I go to my GP, I'm not feeling well? You were just saying a moment ago that one of the concerns is people are not coming when they should come.
Yeah.
What, do you want to say anything more about that?
Yes, I think if you've got a very serious symptom or something that potentially could be serious, the message is absolutely don't hold off. Contact your GP. I think most surgeries, in fact all surgeries, will triage you, so they won't necessarily say come down for an appointment. They'll phone you up, they'll go through your symptoms, they'll make a decision together. So if you're in any doubt, then make contact, because we're able to triage by phone and tell you, yeah, that'll be fine, or no, we should really see you about that.
Yeah, great. Tell us a little bit about what difference your Christian faith makes, particularly this whole issue of fear. I mean, there's a lot of fear about at the moment, understandably. We're reading very worrying headlines, and most of us will know people who have been ill or are ill. How does your Christian faith help you with that? I don't know whether your work environment has become a more unnerving place to be. I guess you're having to wear PPE a lot of the time, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's people in masks, there's people in scrubs, and the cardigans are off. It is very different. There is a huge amount of fear out there. I think that's true. So we see it in the surgery. people ring out repeatedly, really desperate for a vaccination slot. We also see it in heightened anxiety. So Justine at the quiz night was talking about that very candidly. That anxiety can just become overwhelming. I think the fear is driven by the concern that you might catch COVID and you might become very ill or die. But I think the anxiety is slightly different. I think it's driven by social isolation, by disruption, and just a sense of being out of control. So I'm not sure, I personally have been very worried about catching COVID and dying. Perhaps I should be, maybe I should be. But I do know that I too felt really very anxious at times, particularly during lockdown. And I think the things that have helped me with that are, so regular exercise has been hugely helpful. Using the Headspace app, which I really like, that's also been helpful. And also being part of a community at work, but also here at St Matthew's, has been hugely helpful. And I think being a Christian also helps with that. It helps in a slightly different way. It helps mainly because I have no need to fear death. And I know that God has been there, that Jesus, knows what it's like to be human, to suffer and to face death, and that Creator God walks alongside me. And that sort of relationship and that knowledge is just enormously helpful.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of hope in the vaccine. It's great to have some light at the end of the tunnel. And you're involved in vaccinating people as well, aren't you? Sort of.
Yeah.
Is that a big part of your week, or is
that's my favourite part of the week.
Okay.
You have people come in and they're just enormously grateful to you.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happens is they come in and they talk to you for ages. You think, come on, and then they try and take off their clothes, and you find they've got 10 layers of underwear on, and it's a complete disaster.
Right.
But it is still my most favourite part of the week so far.
Right. So the main delays for the vaccine is kind of not getting enough supply quickly enough, and too much underwear would be
the rate limiting factor is the number of long johns in Suffolk.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Tell us how you see that whole issue of hope. We've got a lot of hope. Or someone's got hope because of the vaccine, and that's one way of looking at it. But as a Christian, how do you see that whole issue of hope?
Yeah, I think the vaccines do give us hope, and it's right to be hopeful, isn't it? I think in the end we probably will control COVID. We may well go back to something like normal, but we also know that the vaccine is not a panacea. Well, it doesn't really, doesn't cure cancer, it doesn't cure or treat other infections or illnesses. And so in the end, our bigger problem is that as humans, we're going to succumb to one or other of those things and pass away. And no amount of vaccine or other treatment really changes that. So as a human, I know that death is inevitable, vaccine or no vaccine. But as a Christian, I also see that Jesus, through his execution and resurrection, he's conquered that. And by trusting in him, death really has no hold on me. And I think the knowledge and certainty of that changes everything. So David in Psalm 56, he puts it like this, for you, that's God, have delivered me from death and my feet from stumbling, that I may walk before God in the light of life. And I just think that puts it very nicely.
That's great. Thanks very much, Pete. Thanks for coming in and talking to us in person.